Welcome to World Talk with Friends, where the small world we live on becomes smaller as we discover neighborhoods all over the world by simply talking to our neighbors. This is Haggy Shack Radio Productions. Colleen Kelly is producing with friends Nancy, Nora, Neil, and those we have yet to meet. Welcome to our world. Haggy Shack Radio, and you are listening to the Say What Show with myself and Nora.
World Talk with Friends, sorry.
Huh?
World Talk with Friends.
World Talk, what did I say?
Say what?
Oh, World Talk
Say what?
I'm so sorry. World Talk with Friends. I don't even know what day it is. What day is it? I mean, I normally know the day because of what show I might be doing, but
yeah, it's the 5th of April.
5th of April, yeah.
Yep.
So, well, how you doing, Nora? What's happening over there in Italy? Is the weather getting warmer?
Oh yeah, the weather is very nice now. You don't have to go out with a jacket anymore. Yeah, it's spring. It's officially spring. It's quite nice. Nice cool breeze. Sometimes it's actually a bit hot during the day because the sun is very strong. But you know how spring is. You know, suddenly there's rain and just cloudy like moments, and then the sun comes back out. So it's a little bit bipolar. You know, that's how spring is. Yeah,
that's true.
Mm-hmm. But it's lovely. It's lovely. It's very nice.
So what's happening? Is there anything happening over there in Italy or over in Europe, or even in Saudi Arabia? You must be still in contact with people there, your daughter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, no, I mean, the typical things, you know, Saudi's changing, it seems. That's what she's telling me, that things are starting to open up. The prime minister, who's the son of the king, he's like really opening up the country, bringing things that, you know, you'd never think would ever be brought in or accepted, like, for example, musical concerts, whatever, music in restaurants and cinemas. You know, we don't have cinemas in Saudi. You don't go to the cinema and watch a movie, you know. So they're starting to kind of open up all these things. A few months ago, there was the Comic-Con in Jeddah, the western, the city in the west coast, which is close to Mecca. Comic-Con is you know what that thing they do, I don't know if they do it yearly, but it's for like sci-fi fanatics and lovers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's quite big, you know, like people, girls and boys. Yeah, it was mixed. You see all the girls and the boys, they all have these costumes, and of course there are a lot of like traditional religious people that were very upset, and they were saying, you know, they're bringing in devil worshippers to Saudi, and you have to laugh when you see that, because they're just so ignorant, and they just judge. They don't understand that this is just fun. People are just going there to have fun. It has nothing to do with anything diabolical. Yeah, so they were very upset. So the prime minister is really pushing. He's really pushing. And I also heard from my friend that they've actually confirmed, but you know, you keep hearing this, but this time it sounds serious. They've actually confirmed that they will allow women to drive very soon in Saudi Arabia. I still don't know if that's just a rumor or that's true, but I've heard this from different sources saying that this time it actually seems to be serious. And it makes sense, because although I would be a little bit skeptical, you know, when you hear that so-and-so and so-and-so, like well-known celebrities of the Arab world, singers, are actually going to Riyadh, which is the capital, to perform. And there are going to be crowds of people going there and listening to music and a concert and other things like that, like the Comic-Con thing and other things. You know, I'm starting to think that there could be a chance that they're actually going to start allowing women to drive. So let's see. I'll keep you posted, but it seems exciting.
So in Saudi Arabia, you do have singers. You do have singers. Or do you make movies? I mean, I never even thought to go into this before. What's like?
Yeah. We do have singers, mostly men. There are also women, but usually the women are not accepted. So most of them leave Saudi and go live in Lebanon or Dubai. But yeah, we do have singers. We also have actors. We do movies, comedy. Actually, Saudi Arabian people are very funny. They have a very, very nice sense of humor. They're quite funny.
They didn't make movies. They don't have cinemas.
Yeah, they don't make. They have. Okay, practically when I say that, I mean, like, for example, there's a new movie even coming out from Hollywood. You know, you go to France, you go to Italy, you go to wherever, you can go and watch that movie, right? In Saudi, you don't have that. Besides the fact that they do movies or they don't do movies, the scene of the cinema in Saudi is still very small. It's growing. It's not that impressive. Like, for example, the Egyptian cinema. Egyptian cinema is very impressive. They've been doing it since the 40s. There was a period of time where it was not very good, like in the 80s, 90s, but now the Egyptians are very good. They're really, really good. I mean, plots, graphics, they're doing good. They're doing a good job. Saudis, however, are still they're still very young at this. But we do have directors, Saudi directors, both male and female. There was this movie that came out that I think is called Jude or something like that. I'm not sure. And it talks about a girl a Saudi girl living in Saudi Arabia and her struggle, with the whole gender inequality. And this is a Saudi movie. So they're getting there slowly. They're getting there.
It would seem to me that kind of a movie wouldn't even be allowed to be made there.
Well, you see, even if it's not allowed there, it's allowed in Dubai. You get what I'm saying? And usually these people are supported from other people who are quite important. So
within Saudi Arabia itself, they may not make the movie, even though it's Saudi people doing it. They go to Dubai where they're much more open over there.
Of course.
And they make the movies there, and then in some cinemas in Saudi Arabia, those movies might be allowed to be played?
Well, I don't know. What I've heard from my daughter, for example, and from other sources, that they're going to open up the cinema for even international movies, mostly American. But of course, with a lot of cutting. They would cut off like sex scenes, romantic scenes, anything that contradicts, tradition and religion. And the movie could be, an hour and a half long. You may watch an hour movie. So there will be things be cut off, I'm sure, 100%. But that's what I mean by cinema. There are also Arabic movies, like they would put Arabic movies coming from Egypt, movies, for example, coming from other Arabic countries. So they would put English and Arabic movies. But again, for example, there are some comedies and series, Saudi series, but they are very controlled. You can watch them. They put them on TV, and you have actors and actresses. But it has to be confined in the box of tradition. You get what I'm saying? So it's not that it's not allowed, but it has to be very controlled, very contained.
So there is a strict censorship in place. Yeah.
Exactly. So, for example, Egyptians, when they used to do some very quite explicit movies, they wouldn't be allowed to do them in Egypt. They would go to Lebanon. This was in the 70s, I think, or in the 80s, I'm not sure. They would go and do these movies in Lebanon. So you see, it's interesting. You get to see that in every growing culture. There's always this kind of, where you can't do it in one place, you can do it somewhere else, and slowly, with time, it starts getting accepted in the country that it wasn't accepted before. So I'm seeing the change. It's coming. It's happening slowly, but it's happening.
But the traditionalists would be afraid of this change, I would suspect.
Well, yes, absolutely, because right now there seems to be a faction that is fighting against the prime minister, the son of the king, and he's kind of like being very aggressive with them. I heard that he jailed, I think, 2 or 3 of these religious men. He jailed them for I don't know what reasons exactly, but he's putting very strict rules on the traditionalists. He's kind of shutting them up. I don't know how true that is in the sense of how deep it goes, or if it's just a superficial thing. But yeah, I mean, if things continue like this, there may be a revolution. You know, there are going to be problems. Because there is definitely a pushback from the traditionalists. And there are a lot of people that want to rid themselves from the chains. They want to be free and live and be, you know, live an open life. Doesn't have to be a life of, you know, promiscuity and, you know, doing crazy things because that's not what being a civilized culture or society is. It's just having some openness.
At least to be able to drive a car.
Right, thank you. Exactly. So, you know, these little rights are not being given to people. And now we're like in 2017. I mean, the internet is everywhere. People are exposed, and so it's time. You know, I always say, you know, traditionalists, if you want to, you should have your little island there, live amongst each other, do what you want to do. But no, they are adamant that the whole world has to become like that. You know, we're going back to ISIS and going back to the whole, which they call them the caliphate people who believe in the, you know, the return of the caliphate, which is those who ruled after the prophet. And of course, it's completely distorted. Yeah, they're sick-minded people. They're just fanatical. I mean, how can you? Practically, what they want is to turn everyone to their side, whether it's willingly or unwillingly. That's what they want. That's their purpose, and that's scary.
You know, this is. I think it's kind of trending. Is trying to figure out what it is about some of these people that it didn't work. That's why it isn't there. You know, it didn't work. But they want to go back to these seemingly places they know or things that they think they know. Some kind of things are always safer when they were, you know.
Right.
And this is such a different world. I mean, there's nobody on this planet that is going to ever be able to go back.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah, last night I gave Colleen the link to the most recent Antarctic information from David Wilcock that I know of.
Right.
And she unfortunately fell asleep. But
that happens.
Any time here, Colleen, I really want you to jump in here because it's to me very critical that we come to some kind of a, you know, just in the collective here, just talking collective. Come to some kind of a realization of what's about to occur if, in fact, Wilcock is telling us the truth. And he does think this is the truth, and he certainly presents an impressive presentation as to it is true.
Very impressive.
Yeah, there's other people. I mean, well, there's so many confirmations of it. Even Gene Rockefeller. Before, and I've told these stories. We're going over some of the stories that we've had before, but to kind of make an overall look at what we're talking about when we talk about what's happening in Antarctica and the breakaway civilization. And this is, I think, it feels like Christmas is coming early. You know, that there is going to be a massive change, and it does seemingly point to disclosure, but disclosure in a way that is oddly kind of creative.
Now, I'd like to say something about that. You know, it is trending because people are getting curious, even those who are not in the alternative media scene. I mean, when I mentioned the whole Antarctica thing, there was my ex-colleague and her fiancé. They're not. I mean, especially him. He's a banker, and he's very his feet are very much on the ground. When I told him about this, just very briefly, he went crazy. They went home. They started researching it. I didn't know. Then when I saw them again, he's like, I read this and I read that, and I was like, oh, really, Paulo? Seriously? I was shocked. So I touched something there in both of them. And this has been happening with other people too, not just them. For example, my daughter as well, and other people. It seems like there's an innate intuitive feeling towards Antarctica? Could it be that it has something to do with a long-lost memory that's within our DNA that we inherently know, but not consciously? So I just wanted to throw that in. I think Antarctica does have the answers, if everything that David Wilcock said is true.
Did they, when you told it to them, all right, let me put it to you this way. Have you said other things to them where you got the glassy-eyed?
No, from them.
So these two people. So they're always receptive to what you're saying. So they didn't fight you when you started telling the Antarctic story?
No, they didn't. But I didn't expect that they would be that interested in it. Yes, exactly. I mean, I found out the next time we met that they actually checked it out, and he was all enthusiastic, and we were with other people. They started making fun of him. Oh yeah, you and I. So and I, of course, I backed both of them up, and I said, it's interesting to have it's good to have an open mind and look. And he didn't care. He was like, oh, I don't care. I mean, I want to understand. So I was like, wow, that's really, both of them. They were both. I mean, I've talked to her about it. She believes in the Illuminati. She believes that there are these secret societies, but we never got into depth. At work we can't really talk too much. But then when we started seeing each other outside, I started realizing that there was more openness, but not him. She said, I was shocked that he opened up to this idea. It's like the Antarctic thing triggered something. Why that?
Well, yes, and I'm gonna. All right, let's do this now. I'm going to give you guys.
I put the link in the chat to that video.
Oh, you did. Okay. This link. Okay, this link is to. I'll go over to chat here. Gosh, I'm out of my league here when I do this stuff. All right, check the link that I just put in chat. And what it is it's CosmicReality.com, our radio station. If you go up to radio, the tab radio, and you look at it, it's going to have a thing that says Antarctica for anybody in the archives. CosmicReality.com/Antarctica. But you can go to CosmicReality.com and go to the radio tab, and you'll see it, Antarctica. This is a picture. It's pictures that I took off of the video. And where the heck did I put it? Okay, I guess I better just do it. Okay, I'm going to go over to it. These pictures are on the video, and it's supposedly what Corey Good could attest to, that yes, this is similar to what I saw. This is very similar to what I saw when I was in Antarctica. It's being done by just people out there that somehow or another are tuned into it and are creating these pieces of art that, in fact, are actual correct presentations of what is in Antarctica. Now, they may not know that this is Antarctica. When I started looking at the pictures, I had this sense of familiarity. Now, yes, I have remote viewed Antarctica, but not these images. These images. That's not. It just felt like when they'd show me the pictures, it was like the one that really drew me in was the one that you see. It's third one down, and it's got like a river, like a green river, in this. You're looking from the inside out of a cave. It's just like, that feels so familiar. And that's why I took the time to pull these off of there, so that, and you don't know whether or not these are images that they have shown us in videos, movies, similar, that we're feeling a similarity to it. But this, I don't know. How are you? Did you get the same feelings from these?
The one with the Green River, to me, reminds me of talks about inner Earth. Correct.
Well, this is all under the ice.
Right. So it would be inner Earth. Well, depending on how deep the ice goes.
2 miles.
However. And I realize these are not actual photographs.
Right.
But I'm thinking the size of these ships, as many as there are, that has to be like humongous under there. Because some of these ships are described as being 20 to 60 feet, football field type, size. So I'm like, these, and the pillars in these look like high-rise buildings, like they're...
Yes, they are.
How the heck did they do that? But they're quite amazing.
Well, okay, now we can go into the history, but because we were talking about that, we may have some kind of an image of something in our head, some programming that they've already put in our heads, so that when your friend in Egypt, you said something to him, it clicked. I mean, it may be in the collective, for all I know. But I'm wondering if they, let's say, preconditioned us to a point that, yes, we're going to be able to handle these images. Imagine somebody who is, we're sitting here and we're going like, wow, that is a lot of people. They say millions of people live down there already.
Wow.
And because they've known about this since the early 30s, that there was this underground, I don't even know what you'd call it, because it's an underground world of itself. It's more than a city, it's a world, it seems to me. Now when I remote viewed, I was inside an area that was basically much smaller, like if inside one of these pillars was where I was seeing room-sized things. I was not seeing any of this. And yet when I looked at it, it has this familiarity. Now, yes, those vehicles that are in it are typical Nazi vehicles.
Yeah, the Nazi bell thing.
No, well, not so much the bell, but the ones that we know they did put together. And
the UFO type ones, the like classic UFO ones.
Right.
Yeah, but they were described kind of as a bell type shape.
Well, it is. Yes, it is. And there are some other pictures. I highly recommend that you listen to the video. There is a link to the video on this page. And again, that's cosmicreality.com/Antarctica. Just go to the radio tab and it's right under there. Go ahead, Nora. You had something to say.
What I find interesting here, let's say, okay, the first two pictures are, pictures of artists, just doing art, let's say. Let's look at the last picture where Corey is with that being from the Alliance, I don't remember what his name is. I noticed that in the picture, there are different types of crafts right here. I can see the cigar-shaped and what seems to be the classical UFO kind thingy, or the oval ones that look like eggs. Now, I find that interesting. Does this mean that there are different types of civilizations here? Because from what I understand, the different types of crafts symbolize the different types of civilizations. So this kind of confused me a little bit.
Well, that's what they tell us, but we also know that a lot of the things that we see that we consider outer space type of UFOs are actually, part of the secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the cigar-shaped craft, and they're just. It looks like there are different types of crafts.
There definitely are different peoples down there. Now, well, it gets even though I have read everything I've found on Wilcock has written on this thing, and I've read its Ascension Mysteries. What seems to have happened is that way back when, and I'm not remembering a long time ago, there were the ancient builders, and the ancient builders that Wilcock
covers rather extensively in the Ascension Mysteries, came to this part of the universe/galaxy. And it's in the area that they're talking about is interesting in that it includes the solar system, but it also includes star clusters that are around us. So it's like an area, what do they call? What did he call it? The local community of these stars, and that you can tell that they are somehow connected because they have the same motion involved in them, like they're going around something, like something has got them in their control. And according to Wilcock, it is a portal in this area of the in the solar system area that is actually such a powerful gravitational force that it's this whole local star cluster is moving because of this particular powerful point in this area of space. So the ancient builders came in, and he says that they began with Venus, but they began. So I don't know if it was terraforming or whether they were really seeding, or they were working with what was there. It's never been clear to me. But they came in, they built massive pyramidic structures and other geometric structures based on aluminum, a particular aluminum that ends up looking like glass. And they have found these structures. The secret breakaway civilization has found these structures all over this local cluster. These are the people that supposedly were originally on the Antarctic continent, and that a lot of what is there appears to have been put there by the ancient builders. So the story goes that when Meldeck got exploded, where the asteroid belt is right now, when that got destroyed and Mars got destroyed basically because the atmosphere got blown off and everything, there was a group of Martians, now David's saying Martians, I don't know, that ended up living on the moon for, I think he said, 500,000 years. And when they had gotten there, they were extremely tall. I mean, like stories, buildings, think of 2-3-story peoples. And that living on the moon for all those 500,000 years or so, their height is lowered, but they're still like 12 feet tall. And they were attacked by the Dracos about 55,000 years ago. So they managed to beat off the Dracos enough to leave Moon, because apparently there was enough damage done that it wasn't a sustainable environment, and they went to Earth. Now, if you've been there for 500,000 years, it seems to me like you would have already been on Earth. This falls apart. Some of the story starts to fall apart for me, because why weren't you on Earth before? I mean, it's got to be a lot more habitable than the moon. Why weren't you there before? But anyway, the story says that they went there. This is why I don't think that they were the ones on the moon. I just feel like it's a story, but it's not holding true to me. But I do believe that these people, which are being called the pre-Adamites, that they crashed on Antarctica on purpose. And it wasn't so much a crash, like they knew they weren't going to get off again. So they went to the area that they knew had stuff on it from the ancient builders. So if this is the true story, and you've had 55,000 years to build a secret, civilization in the underworld of the Antarctica, maybe they do have this capability. But then again, why would they keep it secret down there when they're trying to take over the world? Wouldn't this be the way to do it? As I'm talking about this story, it's getting worse and worse to me, because it's like, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
Colleen,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the two of you have been, hearing this stuff. What are you guys feeling about it?
Colleen?
Well, I find it very, very interesting. And, I've been hearing about this for several years now. Possibility, yeah. Depending on who all is involved. And I would guess that it's world, galactic kind of collaboration, it seems. We've heard about the Germans, since the Nazi period, when we were at war with them. They were doing all their stuff in Europe. And then there's the whole UFOs around the White House when Truman was in, that is said to have been not ET, but actually German technology that was kind of showing Truman what they had. And then after the war, supposedly they all went to the Antarctic, but I think they were there before that. Well, if it's true, that they were.
Right. It seems like that the 53 flyover of D.C. was in response to the Navy's attack during high jump on Antarctica. That's what I
was just thinking.
Yeah, 47 that they did high jump, and of course they got the crap beat out of them. And so the way that I heard the story was that at that point they decided to confront the West, or the Allies, their ex-enemies, and threaten them. Say, look, we've got all this technology. If you really want to screw around with us, we'll just beat you into submission. And that the other side said, oh my God, we didn't know that it was going to be this bad, but we'll agree to play with them because we don't have any options. But in the meantime, we'll figure out how to take it over, how to beat them once they think that we're friends. That's the way I understood it set up. But
what Colleen just said, she said that, or did you say that? I'm so sorry. Practically, one of you was saying that if they have all this technology, then why wouldn't they? Yeah, I think you said it, Nancy. Why wouldn't they just get over it and dominate everyone? I mean, there are things that to me, I mean, we're keeping an open mind, we're trying to understand, but what's the sense of all this secrecy? Why? If they can, and it seems like they can with all this amazing technology, they can dominate the world in a day.
It certainly seems that way to me.
Are you talking about the Germans or the ETs?
No, you see, that's a good point. That's a good point, because in Wilcock's presentation, Corey was mentioning about the Anshar, who are the Inner Earth Alliance. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So, are the Inner Earth Alliance there? They're obviously a group of ETs, or a group of beings, whatever you want to call them. And then you have the other side, who are, we can say, the Dracos, or the ones who work with the Nazis. So are they all living in the same place? I mean, you see, this is where I got confused. Are they fighting against each other? Because what I understand is the Inner Earth Alliance is actually trying to keep things under control. And I think they've attacked, 15, he mentioned that Peterson was saying that they killed about 15,000 people in some inner earth fight.
Okay, that was something different. I finally got my hands on. Okay, the Inner Earth people that have been there, they went underground when some other problems of the Upper Earth happened. So they're all down there. Those people were Dave Corso said that they were not in Antarctica. That they were not. That when we talk Inner Earth people, that they're not the same group. And
they're not the same group of who? Sorry, of who?
Dave Corso was specifically asked by me, or maybe Dolly, but is the people in Antarctica inner Earth people? And he said, no, absolutely not. Inner Earth people are not in Antarctica.
I see. Okay.
Okay, so whatever's happening in Antarctica, I suspect has been happening since the beginning of time. Because according to Wilcock, the pre-Adamites, because this pre-Adamite group that was here when the sudden change occurred they say the poles shifted, that caused the devastation of Antarctica, which they're saying is Atlantis. I don't know. But that this huge flood covered the continent, and then as the poles shifted, all of a sudden it was no longer in a tropical kind of an environment. It was now in a Arctic environment, and all that water flash froze. And it flash froze up to 2 miles. So the surface of the continent was flash frozen. So you have all sorts of vegetation and animals that were frozen in the ice while still alive, basically. And so they've been digging these things up too, as well as finding a group of people who were in basically stasis. I mean, the stories that he's telling are just like, oh, wow.
They're very specific as well.
Did he happen to mention the supposed explosion that just occurred in the Antarctic within the last couple of weeks?
Well, this was, how long ago was this thing? It's fairly recent.
No, maybe 2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, I think it is.
3 weeks ago.
But I did not, I know what you're talking about, and I never really did. Yeah, supposedly somebody put a nuke off.
Right.
And everybody was running. And that was what I first heard, was that there had been a nuclear explosion and that everybody had run from the area. But then, right after that, I'm trying to find about this nuclear explosion, and I find that a whole bunch of people from, it's an airline builders, one of the big ones, Lockheed Martin, I believe, was sending was trying to get engineers to go down to the Antarctic to dig up stuff. And there was no mention of it. So I don't know. It just was one of those stories that didn't seem to have any legs.
Well, I'm not sure if you had a nuclear explosion that you're going to have time to run.
Well, right. I mean, but again, it was one of those. It didn't go anywhere, that story, and he said nothing about it.
Which is kind of odd in itself that it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there was stuff that was happening about it, but that particular story just sort of like, oh my God, and it was radiation. There was also supposedly radiation that they detected.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was a nuclear explosion, there would be. But, with the astronaut, which one? Was it Aldrin?
Buzz Aldrin,
yeah.
Went there with Carrie and a bunch of other people, and Aldrin come out and said, there's pure evil in the Antarctic. Beware.
I checked that. I think that was a hoax, by the way.
Well, I had heard that too, but then, it's so difficult to tell because often a story comes out and then you get the following story, this is a hoax. And there's no real way to tell, huh?
There was this guy that was actually analyzing the tweet itself, and it made sense to me because the way Twitter works, there are certain things that show that, it's, I don't know how to explain it, but you would see if the snapshot of the tweet is reliable or not. And the way he was explaining it, and this guy is like into the whole UFO thing, but he was trying to understand, and he was able to debunk it, but that's his own personal effort. And he did explain how the snapshot looked, and he explained how actually it does not seem to be a real Twitter, the official Twitter account of Buzz Aldrin. So it made kind of sense to me, but again, who knows?
Yeah.
You get confused with all this stuff.
Because I've often found that, a lot of these stories that come out that are immediately debunked and stuff, and because there's so much crap out there, you got people trying to tell the truth, you got people trying to cover up what people are trying to tell you.
Right.
And trying to dig down and find out what the hell the facts really are, it can drive you crazy.
Well, Gene Rockefeller had a discussion with Jack. I think she'd be okay me telling this. And Jack proceeded to explain that 90%. She said she didn't seem to be sure if he gave a percentage, but she said, I'm thinking it's 90% based on what he was telling me. And 90% of all the information out there being presented by everybody, mainstream, alternative, everybody, is BS, because they're still under a program of mind control. And the way that this is happening, is the way Gene explained it to me, was that you've got layers and layers upon you, which sounded very, very close to what Lisa Harrison was saying concerning the Lilo character, that they were saying that there's layer after layer of the Matrix. So you get through one layer and you go, oh, okay, I got it. But there's another layer above you that you don't realize is still affecting you. And he basically was saying that, there's only 10% of the people that are out there that are really connected in a pure way. Otherwise, there's a degree of programming happening. And that's not to say the rest of us don't have it too, because I think I'm one of the 10%. Because I'm just not believing anything anymore. I mean, David, I've been following this guy since he started writing, and I've never come to a point where I was really like, wait a minute, David, what are you saying here? This is starting to fall apart on me. So I think that the next layer of where we're at is, you remember we brought in that dragon energy, you can't lie to us. And that the stories are unraveling. They may have been true, but they're not true anymore. And that's this is where I'm at anyway, is that regardless of how much research you've done on a particular subject, that was research that was in the past. And the past continually is changing, because we're making so many changes in the present. So the only people I'm listening to are you guys. I don't think you're under program. But some of the people I really respect are obviously under program.
You know what I think the trick here is to find out if someone is in the program or not, or is being mind controlled. I think it's really about being too attached to the story. It's important to try to keep an open mind and to go with the flow. I keep repeating that. We just need, because at the end we really don't have all the answers. So what better way to receive information than to just keep an open mind? I can tell you that, I've had my fair share of issues with people that are close to me just because of me coming out here with you on the radio. Okay, I'm not going to lie. And I think that's normal with all the people that do this. But I don't care. Why? Because even though I keep repeating that, listen, I'm just keeping an open mind. I'm not saying I believe this. They're convinced that I'm weird and that I believe certain things and that there's something wrong with me. And it's scary, but that's not the case. And that's the point, is that if you believe in something so bad, even though you don't have proof, then there may be some mind control. You need to just keep an open mind. Let things happen. And something that you may have believed in may change. So that's just my little nugget of wisdom. I think it's very important to be discerning regarding that.
I absolutely agree. But it's not just because they do have they can have they can give you and I could do it. I could give you a whole list of why I believed a certain way, only to find out I was wrong. So it's not that there's not data that will support your position. It's just that you cannot possibly have every piece of the puzzle. And that one extra piece could lead you into a totally different look to the puzzle.
Exactly.
And like I say, I am absolutely convinced that the past is changing. What we know is the past. If you go back and you look at certain things, it's like, that's not the way it was. But how do you know that if you never looked at it before? It's like I guess I'm getting a real appreciation for the elders. Mm-hmm. The people that have memory that goes back beyond what we say stay in the present. Well, good Lord, maybe the present thing is changing as we're walking through a day. It's changing. And the people that like myself and people that are like Barbara White, even a few years older than me, their memory, their ability to remember things is what the difference is between us and the new people, the kids. Well, it's not like that. Well, it was like that. Well, how could it be was like that when it's not like that now? Because it was like that. It feels, well, again, I watched The Matrix again. Every time I watch that movie, it gives me another different look at it.
Right.
And I say that maybe half of the movie is really what you want to see. The rest of it is just drama. But there's things in that movie that seem so explicitly, these are the clues that you need to perceive. And this time when I was watching, I talked about it last night. This time when I was watching, I saw a couple of things that I hadn't picked up on before. One of them was when Neil is first being introduced to the fact that the concept of reality that he has is absolutely wrong, and that actually this is the picture, and Nemo shows them the picture, and it's like, oh my goodness, the cities are all desolate, the sky is all cloudy and gunky, and he says to Neil, he says, well, actually we mucked up the atmosphere because the AI was using sun to fuel itself, so we felt if we could block the sun, then it wouldn't have enough energy. But then they found out that they could use the energy from human beings, and so now we're all batteries. That seemed like, is that why they're doing the chemtrails? Is that the real reason? And this movie came out before chemtrails were known about. I mean, we knew about them, but it wasn't, mainstream information. And then the other thing that was like, got it, was at the very end of the movie where Neil is beginning to absolutely perceive his own powers. And how they were portraying it was the fact that when he was at one end of a hall and the agents were at the other end of this narrow hall, and all of a sudden he saw everything as energy. It was no longer solid. He saw the matrix. It was all energy. And I think that's where that's what they're afraid of, is that we realize it's all energy. If it's all energy, then you have complete control over it.
Right.
It's energy. It's nothing, you don't need an atom bomb, honey. All you have to do is change the image. And this goes back to quantum concept. Every time you look at something, it changes. That's how powerful we are. It's very intriguing. Why are they keeping all of this away from us when they could just take it over? What's stopping them? I mean, it's one thing to talk about disclosure. It's another thing to say, well, you're going to disclose that you've got this massive space potential. You know, you're out there. You're a Star Trek universe, and you still haven't told us why. What are you gaining by us not knowing?
Beats me.
They have to be afraid of us.
Yeah.
So what happens if we know? What happens if your friend in Egypt, you know, as all of a sudden he now knows, oh my God, there's this other civilization. It's all different. Everything is different. What happened to him, Nora? Can you perceive a difference in the man?
Well, he's actually Italian, living in Italy. I'm sorry if I may be misinformed. No, I haven't seen him or her since. I mean, I just talked to her on the phone, but yeah, I think that it's like, even if he didn't do anything after that, but I think it's a seed that has been planted. And anything that he is going to hear or see is going to connect to something that already touched him. So I think that's how it works with people. Some people are ready, some people aren't. And I think a lot of people who aren't ready are just afraid. But definitely, I'm sure something has changed.
Well, let's look at people who aren't ready, because, or I told you that I think last show maybe or something, but that when I was listening to President Trump give his speech to the Congress, he went back and was talking about the 100th anniversary of the country and all these technological advancements that were being presented at the ceremony, you know, honoring that. He was very explicit. He said, "What can you imagine what it'll be when there's the 250th anniversary of the country? Can you imagine the technological changes then?" And that's in July.
That's really blatant.
It was pretty blatant. It didn't make. Well, I was intently listening to him, and all of a sudden my bells start going off. Pay attention, pay attention. And so I was very aware before he even got into what he was about to say that where he was in the text didn't easily go to where he went. It was like, this was definitely an odd statement to make within the context of what he was saying. And the way he presented it, the way he looked into the camera, the way he slowed down as if to make a point, I was like, oh my God, they're going to start unveiling stuff in July.
Okay, let's go back to this 100th anniversary of the country.
Right.
Because it should be about 250 years, right?
This is 250 right now.
Yeah. So what's the 100th? Is that when it changed from the Republic to the corporate America?
Oh, wow, interesting point. What would the date have been?
Because wasn't that around 1913 or something like that?
Well, it's 1776, and 100 years, it would have been 1876, which would have been the time that we lost the Republic. You're right. That's interesting, because it was in the Civil War. Was it after that? I don't know, but I did one.
The Federal Reserve was put into place. What year was that?
Well, that was
19-something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the 30s, I think. I'm so bad on the dates. I can never remember dates. But I wondered, why are you talking about the 100th anniversary, 150 years ago? What's that about? So there might be some other clue in that. Because I definitely felt that this was a message. So if all of this stuff is there, even though, we're having problems understanding the actual storyline, it could just be the most amazing thing Well, it would be the most amazing thing that's certainly ever happened to our lifetime. But what happens to those people out there that this is beyond their comprehension? Or is it? I mean, if you're such, it reminds me of something that Walt said to me one day. He said, this breakaway civilization that's created the Star Trek universe. He said, while they were out there playing and they never bothered to tell us, we were becoming the Q. And the definition of a Q is an omnipotent being, like a godlike creature. And when he said it to me, it was like, whoa. Why are they keeping us in the dark?
Okay, the Federal Reserve Act was enacted December 23rd, 1913.
1913.
That's where the central banking system created the authority to issue Federal Reserve notes. So that would be about the 100th year anniversary.
1976 plus 100. Oh, well, that didn't work.
You mean 1776?
I know, I was dyslexic. Oh, no.
Because the 1776 would be about 250 years that he referred to.
Let me do this. Okay, it was 1913. Okay, minus 1776. Yeah, it was about 137 years to 913. I mean, 1913 from 1776. So, but if it was 1876, it would be more in the time frame where we lost the republic, because it was the Civil War that caused that problem to happen. And then the Congress sold us to the banks, the international bankers. They gave them DC. DC eventually just sort of like some kind of a chameleon, just took over the look of the federal government, and we've been walking around thinking we had a government for all this time. It was big old corporations screwing the shit out of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you consider all the people that are in the cabinet and all of that kind of stuff right now, and Trump's ties to the big banks, this Federal Reserve thing, which, they've been he also said he wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve and such. During his campaign, that was a lot of his talk as well. So, I don't know. I think that this one right here has got a lot to do with what he was talking about. Just doing the whole system and Wall Street and all that kind of crap.
They did bring up a bill to audit the Fed in the House. U.S. Congress, the House section. They've done this before, but the Democrats stopped it every time. The Republicans have been wanted to do this. It's been brought up before, and it's actually a Ron Paul bill that was again introduced. I don't think Paul's in the. I don't think he's a member anymore, but it was his original bill that was reintroduced, and his son has introduced a similar bill in the Senate. So it's conceivable that they could both agree to an audit of the Fed, which would be, if it was done right. I saw smoke and mirrors in here.
It is all. Because, one of the things that they do is like they'll go, okay, you guys introduce this bill, this legislation, and we'll pretend like we're against it. But you guys go ahead and do it. It's not going to go through anyway, but it's going to kind of codify the people a little bit. So they play this game so that then they can point fingers at each other when it's the same damn party to begin with. You know, they just switch sides of the table that they're playing on.
Yes, that's what's been happening. I mean, we're dead in the water. We haven't, and this goes back to, the 30s. Nothing is really, I mean, after the war, well, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, but nothing has happened in this country since World War II. I mean, Eisenhower came in after the war and built the infrastructure of the highway system, but nobody's fixing that.
No.
Nobody's fixing the bridges. Nobody's fixing anything. And that includes the government. So we're over. We need to take. We're a minute over. Let's just take a break, and we'll come back and we'll talk some more about what they're saying is happening in Antarctica. Anyway,
fascinating.
We'll be back in almost 6 minutes. This is Jewel. Goodbye, Alice in Wonderland. All righty, we are back.
Okay, thank you very much, Colleen. It is the Willow Talk radio show. Nancy Hopkins speaking. It is 5th, 2017, and Nora Willow is with me. And this is Colleen's production, Haggy Shack. And you can go over to Haggy Shack and donate. Donations, there's a way of putting energy into the radio station, into something you're enjoying. And if you can, just go over there, and if you got $30 you can put out there, give it to her. She'll send you 3 S4 stickers, and you'll save the shipping on it. It's the same price that you would have paid in the store, but you'll be giving it to Haggy, because without Haggy, you wouldn't know about me. And you wouldn't know about somebody. So we're talking Antarctica here, and
Nancy, you're cutting off.
I'm cutting off?
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Okay, I haven't changed anything.
No.
You think it's...
I think it's probably Skype. I want to hang up and try the call again, see if that gives us a better connection.
Okay, all right.
All righty, Nora?
All right, yeah, sure, Nora, Colleen.
Okay. Hello, hello, hello.
I'm still here.
It didn't hang you up?
Nope.
Okay, you're good. Nancy, where are you at? Trying to call Nancy back.
Yeah, I just heard it hang up like a few seconds ago.
Okay. Nancy. One ringy dingy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Continue.
Hello. 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yep.
7.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I was actually turning it over to you two, saying, where would you like to go now? Oh wait, Dolly is asking about
yes.
high jump was in 1947, and it was under Admiral Byrd, and it was a massive Navy flotilla, many ships that went down to Antarctic, supposedly to do scientific investigation, but they were supposed to be there for months, and then they ran back home after a few weeks, and it turned out that it was highly classified at the time, but it's come out over the decades that they were actually attacked by some exotic weapon like a UFO, and that they had their pants beat off of them and just ran home. But that was in 47, and in 53 they had the flyover. I think it was 53. So that was a military operation by the Americans, naval operation that failed. They went down there thinking there were Nazis, that there was an enclave, that there were problems there, and it was I think a concept of a wrap up
we're going to go get those little bastards last time. We're going to get the last of them. And in fact, got the. And again, you go like, well, why, if they could beat back an entire naval flotilla of U.S. ships, why didn't they win the war? You know?
Yeah.
And granted, by the time, you know, the war, maybe they didn't have enough time, but if you look at 47 and they can beat off a naval thing, that's only a few months after they lost the war. And that was one of the things that bothered me, but then I sort of like thought about it and I said, well, did they lose the war? And no, they did not. In fact, by letting Germany take the fall, everybody thought, well, no, you know, that those Nazi thinkers, they're gone. Well, no, they weren't. They just hid.
Mm-hmm. Also, Time is asking a question. Nancy, what did you see when you remote viewed Antarctica?
Well, I couldn't actually remote view it. I had to go through the gin. And yeah, I know people freak out over the gin, but so it wasn't so. Initially, it was not a remote viewing. It was they were showing me holographic pictures. It was like a holographic, you know, Star Trek type of thing, and hologram deck. And so I was seeing different places inside, but it was you know, just people doing workers. You know, it wasn't anything. But until I suddenly did do a remote view, and I was inside a room, and that's when I met the dragon. So, are you glad you asked that?
The pacing dragon?
The pacing dragon, yes. And he was pacing back and forth and back and forth. But let's just review this, because this is why I did it. Was I got a call from Jean Rockefeller, and she was like really highly excited. Jean does not get excited. So it was like, what happened? Oh, you won't believe what just happened. And she had done a spontaneous remote viewing, or I would call it that. I don't know exactly what Jean would say. But she all of a sudden found herself in Antarctica. Now, this was before anybody knew that Carrie was there, before Buzz Aldrin even got there. This was, you know, like at least a week before I heard any of the confirmation of what she had already told me. And she said, everybody was there, all these dignitaries from all over the world, and John Kerry was there. And I said, the Secretary of State? And she said, yes, John Kerry was there. And she said, I think he was surrendering. No, she said, I think somebody was surrendering. I said, what were they doing? And she said, I think somebody surrendered. I said, who was surrendering? And she said, John Kerry. And I said, so John Kerry was surrendering. And she said, yes. And she said, I'm so excited, because she felt that this was a incredibly important event, which I have to agree with if she was spontaneously pulled in to see it. So
did she see this before it was? Sorry, did she see this before it was mentioned?
Oh yes.
Wow. This
was a good week before I ever heard it. As a matter of fact, when she tells me the story, I was like, well, that's really interesting, you know. But I didn't react to it. What was I supposed to do? She saw something. I don't know if it's true or not, you know. I mean, that's the way I am with most people. But Jean, I trust. I've never seen her wrong. So I kind of like put it on, well, okay, let's see what happens. And the next thing I know, I'm seeing that John Kerry was in the Antarctic. And I'm going, damn, she was there. You know, which then made me kind of feel like, well, how come Jean got to get spontaneously pulled out? And I didn't even see it. I wasn't even aware of it. You know, I'm supposed to be the person that knows this stuff, but she doesn't pay much attention to world politics. You know, she couldn't care less. And yet she's the one that gets to go and be the witness and observe, you know, one of the greatest surrenders of all the stories out there, you know. So that's when I went to the gin, and because to remote view, to knowingly remote view like this, I don't even know how she got through, because they've got all sorts of psychic sensors up there that somebody's coming in, they're going to know it. I've tried these places before. As a matter of fact, I suspect that back in the 70s when I was sent on a mission and I came back scared to death, because I ran into one of these psychic blockades. It may have been Antarctic. I didn't know where I was going. I was going after a device. I was not going for a position, a geographic position. So it's maybe that I have been there, and I know how powerful it is, but I the thought of even trying a remote. So when I went through the gin, it was just, can you get me in a back door so I can see what's happening, you know? And that's when I met the dragon. And, but with, you know, so, I mean, Antarctic is definitely, it's a story. It's a story we should probably pay attention to, and apparently other people know it in the collective consciousness. One of the things that Wilcock talked about, oh, I know what it was. It was the underground. I think it was you, Nora, that was talking about the underground, because he did get into talking about the underground and all these people that were killed and stuff.
Yes.
That was operations of U.S. military people against the draconian and cabal underground facilities all through the United States. Remember Colorado had some kind of a blast there that was some kind of an exotic weapon that destroyed the undergrounds underneath the airport? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that seems to be the time frame. I mean the what he was taught, what you were referencing. It wasn't. You got the Antarctic thing that's totally different from these other things. These are. And I'm sure that the vast majority of cabal had no idea about the Antarctic. You know, they don't know. I bet you that we know more than a lot of the cabal people know.
You think?
Sure, because it's layer. Every layer has a different lie, and it's only when you get to the top that you're really beginning to see the truth. When you're down in the lower ranks, they're kept in the dark as much as we are. To give you an example, the secret space program, it's actually got layers in it. Now, the first layer is the layer of your basic military industrial establishment that was approached by German Nazis well, you can't even say they're German, they're Nazis, they're worldwide, to come into an affiliation so that the Germans could share with the Western industrial world what they knew, and that they would be able to do more with the industrial might that, you know, they've now become affiliated with. All of that was what certain people in the breakaway civilization, the secret space program, that's what they knew. They didn't know that there was another program. Now, according to what Wilcock said, or somebody said recently, it was, you had like the Army is your military industrial level, and the Air Force, or the Navy, and the Air Force, the Air Force is your military industrial. They're the ones that are operating that particular level. But then the Navy is operating a level above them. And the Air Force has only recently begun to understand that there's another Navy thing. And that was Sphere Alliance, and that was Corey Good talking about that, if you remember. So there's layers, and I really don't think that they know. I mean, hell, I knew more about the space program, secret space program, than the guy that Corey was talking to. You know, what do you mean they go out? Because they think, the Air Force thinks that there's some kind of a limitation on how far they can go. But again, you know, if you look at it, if you're out on a highway and you're out there long enough, don't you think you'd run into a truck that said, Navy secret space program? You know, I mean, it's like,
I don't think they would do that.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, what do you mean you don't know they're out there? Aren't you flying around in the same space?
Yeah. I think they cloak it. Not cloak it, but they wouldn't really like blatantly put, you know, what they are doing, you know, on their tanks or whatever they use to transport. I don't think they're that dumb.
Okay, but how many spacecraft are out in the solar system? Don't you think you're flown by, or I don't know that, you know. there's got to be accidents. You got to fly into a small area. I mean, I've been in a lot of automobile accidents, and we've got stop signs and stoplights. They don't have any of that out there.
Well, do you know, Two Dog mentioned to me a few months ago that he has seen the UFOs, and he swears that he saw actually a U.S. emblem on it or something saying U.S. Air Force or something like that. I'm not sure. He doesn't believe that he believes that these crafts are all man-made. He's sure about it, and he says that, yes, I do believe that they're there. I've seen them myself, but they are not alien. So I'm just answering what you just said, that he himself has seen something written on it. So
David got into talking about these. Now this is another site that I had in my head, right? Okay, he's saying that Captain America and some other movie where they've got these huge aircraft capable. Instead of being on the water, they're flying around, these huge ships that are actually aircraft carriers, but they're flying around. You know the movies. You've seen these things.
Yeah.
Okay. He says they're real and that they're above us, but you can't see it because they're camouflaged. And how they're camouflaging it from Earth is that they've got an artificial cloud that they're actually putting like a backlit projection system. And so if we look up at night, what we see is stars, because they project stars on this thing that's like a cloud, because during the day it looks like a cloud to you. So he claims there's at least 3 of these out there. I can just imagine if they suddenly uncloaked. How many of these things would be up there? I had a dream once that I saw all these spacecraft just flying in front of me. And it was one of those dreams that it felt real. And I just wonder sometimes about what is going to happen to those people that have no concept that this is even possible. Let's go back to, we've got a whole bunch of, apparently Colleen was very busy researching. She says that President Wilson asked the U.S. Congress for a declaration of war on Germany. That was June 5th, 1917. And then on March 17, the British fighting the Ottoman Turks in the First World War, after a series of defeats, captured Baghdad. Now we had the Russian Revolution. Russia was in upheaval when the war broke out. That's when the war caused the people to revolt, and that was the beginning of the Russian Revolution, and that was 1917. And then I don't even know what this is, the Ottomans. A bit OCD. Love you. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so, what was I talking about before that? I forget. Oh, I was wondering about the people. I mean, Saudi Arabia, you get up one day and you walk out into your yard and you look up and there's a huge spacecraft just hanging there. Never occurred to you that you would ever see something like this in the real? Well, what happens to your mind?
Do you want me to surprise you? That's just my humble opinion. I think that the Saudi Arabians would be much more accepting of the West if they saw that. That may come to you as a surprise. I don't know. It's just because I think culturally, religiously, people are more inclined to believe things in the sense that when they do see something, they will immediately see it as a miracle. They're not going to do the whole analysis of their UFOs, or they're not going to get into all that discussion of, they're aliens. but they will look at it more as a miracle because they believe that the God Almighty can do anything, which in reality the Prime Creator can.
Could it also be that if a lot of the information coming out now indicates that a lot of the ancient hidden technology as well as records are indeed there in the Middle East, hidden under sand and in pyramids and such?
Right. Well, Colleen, I remember when I was studying at school, and we study history, the poor curriculums that we had, but there was this one thing that did strike me. We were studying Iraq before it was Iraq. So, the area of Mesopotamia, we were studying this, and they did mention the whole story of the libraries being burnt. So that's something that we did study. They were mentioning how a lot of information, a lot of books, a lot of things that came from the ancient times have been burnt. Now, we don't know if they've been really burnt or,
Is that referring to the libraries in Alexandria, Egypt?
Well, not that. There was even a library in Iraq. I remember that very, very well. And they said that there was a lot of stuff, a lot of treasure, a lot of information that has been destroyed in Iraq, in that area. Now, I don't know if it's exactly Iraq, but in that area. So Egypt is a little bit more west.
Ancient Sumerian.
Exactly, ancient Sumerian. Now, they didn't say specifically ancient Sumeria, but they were referring to that time. Mm-hmm. So they do accept that there has been something. Someone has breached into the libraries and all the places where there was knowledge, because they specifically spoke of books. Now we know that books hold knowledge, right? So if these books have been burnt, let's say they've been burnt, then a lot of information has been
taken and hidden in the Vatican.
Exactly. And this is another thing that we believe in the Middle East. People, if you go speak to a Middle Eastern person who's a little bit intelligent and can think, and you tell them, where do you think all the ancient books are right now? They will immediately tell you, even Saudi Arabians, okay? They will tell you, yeah, they're all in the hidden dungeons of the Vatican. They know that. Mm-hmm. Isn't that intriguing? They know that. And it's accepted. Mm-hmm. They know that the Vatican is hiding information. So, even though they're very closed-minded on certain things, but there is, I remember talking about this a few months ago. We brought this up and I said, even with all the dogma that exists in the Eastern area, due to religion and tradition, that's mixed up together, there is still some sort of awareness. They do believe in the whole ideology of the conspiracy, that it's called conspiracy in the modern, like a civilization in the West. They mock these people who believe in these things and say it's conspiracy theory, but the East actually does believe that. And the proof is that I remember when I was very young, they would always talk about the infidels, and that's where they mix up their own information. There is truth in what they say, but the way they see it is wrong. Meaning, they are putting the blame on the wrong people. But they do say these infidels who come from the West, what they're trying to say, but I think they have misinformation as well, or they've been disinformed, I don't know, but they say that the evil is coming from the West right now. Now, they use it in a way where we have to kill all the, Western people, whoever's not Muslim. That's where I say it's wrong.
Well,
but they are...
but too, when you're... and I understand that, because that comes from the other side, the East as well, when talking about, well, they don't call them infidels, but non-believers as well, You look at what the Catholic Church has done all over the world as far as exterminating, mass genocide of peoples, during the,
the Inquisition?
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. With all stories, there's truth in it, and then there's also false information or misinformation, misunderstanding, because all of these, once the religion is organized, then it becomes, this big, and we've said this several times, this big power thing. Control and power and money all go into this organization. And to me, it's wrong on both sides. It's not, the East is bad, the West is bad. It's people, get over yourselves and let people be who they are instead of all the crap that goes along with it. But the point being that all of this, even people forget that Christianity started in the Middle East, and that it started out as Jewish, and that the holy books, the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible started out with the same books. I think the first 3 in the Quran, the first 5 in the Torah, and then all the others in Christianity, although Catholics have a lot more of the books, but they're taking them in and putting them out and all that kind of stuff constantly too. But the fact is that the history, the buildings, the tablets, the scrolls, the carvings, are all there in the Middle East, and they are systematically being destroyed. Although people do take pieces off, of these buildings and hide them away or sell them off or whatever. And I'm rambling.
No, you're right. It's very interesting to think that it's all concentrated in a very small area. Mm-hmm. What I would think is that it seems like these beings, and we're not going to go back to very ancient history like what Wilcock was saying, of the ancient builders and everyone else. Let's talk about, for example, the Anunnaki, or these beings that have come, I don't know how many, 100,000, 150,000 years ago or so. It seems like that was the portal. That was the area. That was the area of focus. So it would be interesting to assume that all religions that came from that area could have been manufactured from the same groups. Mm-hmm. Now, whether there are prophets that came to give a good message, maybe they came in to infiltrate and to help wake people up. I don't know if these prophets were being misguided or they were infiltrators to try to, because you would understand that if people are walking on a certain path and they believe in something, you can't just go and tell them, no, it's not that way, it has to be this way, you better follow me. So I think there's a lot of mass psychology working.
Right, and it could have been, as you say, it could have been someone who had these thoughts, these ideas, but in order to get the people to listen, he said, look, I'm a prophet. This information was handed to me by God.
Right.
Because I've thought about that too. And there's a whole lot of talk about prophecy now, as whenever the shit hits the fan, there's always a lot of prophecy and end time talk. But with the prophecies per se, are they really prophets, Are they getting good information, or is somebody feeding them information? As is happening now, we see with a lot of the people that a bunch of people are listening to. You know, they get downloads or they get messages from this being or that being or these people. Are they being fed disinformation for whatever purpose, you know, to get, I don't know, more followers? You know, people seem to follow more if they're afraid than, you know, than when times are good and everything looks hunky-dory. So I wonder about all this stuff, too, you know. Seems the fear factor seems to be the big thing right now, and you've seen that for years with the horror flicks and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, like the 2012 movie. That was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the alien invasion movies, and most of them are that, God, they're here to kill us and eat us and make slaves of us. My thing is, as you mentioned earlier, that if they have all of this capability, if they have these ships that can come from 100 and gazillions light years away, that's a slight exaggeration, you know, and disable missile launchers and all of that sort of thing, then these beings, if they really wanted to rule this planet, they could have killed us all off a long time ago and just taken over the whole planet.
Exactly. This would make you think that there may be the opposition. This is where it gets tricky. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of disinformation, and they're very, I mean, if we talk about the devil is very deceitful. He's an artist in deceit. So you could be following something that actually gives you good and beautiful things like about love, but then they're you get something that contradicts it. Yeah. So you start thinking, wait a second, what's going on here? That's where I start putting a question mark. Mm-hmm. As soon as I start studying something, or I'm being told to follow something that contradicts itself, to me that's already a red flag. I don't care what people say, whatever religion it is, whoever I offend. This is just my opinion, because I go with logic. There is logic here. You cannot follow something that contradicts, that gives you a contradicting message. It just doesn't make sense, because as Nancy says, a genuine person or a genuine situation is where you see consistency. And unfortunately, in a lot of these creeds or messages, there is a lot of inconsistency. There's a lot of it just doesn't make sense, a lot of it. So,
well, to me, life is a huge contradiction. You know, with life, the natural process of life is death. Death of the physical is birth of the spiritual, and vice versa. That's the way it's looked at. So to me, it's all contradictions. It's all negative and positive, good and bad, depending upon our perception of it. Dichotomy. Life is one huge dichotomy, I think. I don't know that, you know, we spend a lot of time trying to figure it all out, and I'm not sure that we can, especially if reality is based on what we think it is, and you have billions of people thinking. You know, it's like, what?
Right. It would be very arrogant of us to say that we've figured it out, and I don't think we will ever figure everything out. That's the journey of the soul. It keeps learning. If infinity exists, which we can't really conceive with our brain, then it means that there is always going to be a process of learning. So if we kind of wrap our heads around that and accept it, then we become more patient, and we just accept that this is how it is. But for example, if you talk about death, you said something very true, that it's all about perception. If you look at death as something negative, then definitely you will see contradiction in the circle of life. But there's a difference between leaving this earth and moving on, if you believe that, than actually causing harm to someone. It's all about the act, the intention.
Right.
And, you know, the intention is very important, I think. Of course, intention can be tricky, because sometimes you believe something so much that you actually believe that it's right, but it's not. You're actually harming other people.
Right.
And you say that, yeah, but my intention was good. So, again, I repeat, discernment is very important. And I think to get to the point where your intention is good and you are really practicing the law of you know, free will and respect is when you keep an open mind and always accept the idea that you can change and expand and understand that you were wrong, and that wrong that you discovered, you can learn from it and have the humility to accept that you have done that mistake, or you whatever, and just move on.
Right.
Forgiveness. So
what's good for me may not be good for you or someone else.
Exactly.
You know, so the whole process of us wanting everybody to have, say, what we have, because we think our life's great, you know. We may be doing them harm by doing that, because it's not good for them.
Exactly.
So it is difficult, you know, and you try to make laws and stuff so that we all have to live the same kind of life. Well, there's a whole bunch of us that just don't fit into that whole idea of that good life. And what is considered that good life, we have found that not a whole lot of that is all that great. You know, you consider television, you consider all these newfangled foods that aren't really foods and all this kind of stuff. And we go, well, we're civilized now. Well, civilization's killing you. So, you know, so I look at a lot of this stuff this way, and that's kind of why I have trouble often verbalizing it, because I got all this crap going around in my head going, yeah, but...
I can't blame you. Well, you see, I think we go back to what Nancy was talking about, the Matrix, and something that really struck me was that when at the end Neo goes to see the architect, and he finds out that the anomaly in the whole system, which is a perfect system, is the freedom of choice. So Neo was the anomaly. He was the glitch in the system because Neo realized that he had a choice. So he was the virus. You see the irony? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where your head starts to spin, because even though I understood that actually made me even more confused. Mm-hmm. So is freedom of choice actually the virus?
Well, you know? I would think, because it doesn't go along with the program.
But what is the program? And who created the program? So you see, it starts to get into this really entangled web where your head starts to hurt. Mm-hmm. I mean, at least me.
Well, and the program is constantly morphing and changing, especially if you throw you give it free will and the ability to think, which a lot of these new programs are kind of designed that way towards the whole AI thing. Mm-hmm. So then, which one's the virus then?
Well, I'll ask you a question. Uh-oh. Let's go back to the whole story. You'll like this. Let's go back to the story of the revolt of Lucifer. Okay? This is how we studied it in Islam. I don't know if it's the same as in Christianity. The angels worked for God. Okay? They all had set rules and jobs. They all knew their place, and they all knew what they had to do. They had a purpose. And they all followed that purpose without really having their own free will. Okay? But they were very spiritual beings. So when God created Adam, he told the angels to bow down to God's creation, because it was a creation that God loved very much. And the angels bowed down. The only one who didn't bow down was Lucifer. He said, I won't. I'm not going to bow down to clay, to mud and clay. I'm more than that. So God told him, no, you have to bow down. That is what I'm telling you. So everyone had to listen and obey God. There was no free will. And that's when Lucifer decided to practice his free will. Okay, I'm just talking very objectively here. Okay, I'm not with or against. This is just an objective story. He revolted and said no. And he got jealous. Because he felt like, I've been working for you. I've been obeying you. I've been loving you. And doing everything you asked me.
Was like the top.
Exactly.
Most favored.
Right. So he's like, you want me to bow down to that? To these beings that you just created? Why? So that's where the whole story seemed to have started. Now, besides the fact that God was really God or it was someone else, and it's very difficult to know that. Mm-hmm. But it seems like, and going back to the downloads I got a while ago when I talked to Nancy about it, and I shared it also on the show, that it seems like that's where the virus started. So is the virus positive or is it negative? You see, that's where it starts to become a little bit tricky. I keep repeating that word. It's tricky.
Well, see, to me, one, then God is, what's the word I want? A tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't like tyrants very much. We rebel constantly. If we do exactly as we're told, when we're told, how we're told, blah, 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 then we become nothing more than robots.
Right.
And
exactly.
If that's the case, then what the hell is the point of life?
If we don't have free will, that's what you're saying.
Right. If we don't have free will, then what the hell's the point?
Well, this is where I think there is something missing in the story.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole point, and that's where I lost a lot of people in my life. Where I think it was so outrageous what I said, is that this story doesn't seem to be talking of prime creator.
Mm-mm.
It seems to be talking about someone. If we go to the story of Sophia, as you know, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, when was it? And talking about the story of her creation, that she created the demiurge. Could that be? Because they keep confusing you. They say, no, the demiurge is Satan. Yeah, but Satan is Lucifer. Well, what's going on here?
Yeah, see?
They keep, exactly. That's where the deceit, I think, comes in. And that's where my head starts to hurt. Because as much as you try to, people dedicate their whole lives to studying these things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not going to take a month or two of trying to understand something that you're really going to understand the whole story. But you see, that's where I'm trying to get to. Is the demiurge should not be Lucifer. If Lucifer, then Lucifer is not Satan. So it seems like they're putting in two beings in one to confuse everyone, and that the original story of the rebellion was actually misinterpreted. So that was not prime creator. That was the demiurge, who was actually Satan, let's say. I'm just throwing it out there. And he actually pinned that label on the one who revolted and who wanted freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, see,
to me, there's definitely something that doesn't make sense in the whole story of the whole rebellion thing. There's something that just doesn't fit.
Well, there's a whole bunch of it that doesn't fit for me.
Right.
The whole good versus evil, you're good if you do exactly what you're told when you're told, blah, 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 sounds like a great, big, huge control mechanism in religion. Basically takes away, to me, your whole spiritual aspect, because it basically turns you into this physical creature who does what it was created for and therefore is a slave who has no choice, no free will. You know, if you want to continue to live and stay in the graces of whomever, the good graces, then you don't ask questions. You don't deviate at all from the program. So, you know, and we spend our lives, we thinkers, we who gather in these chat rooms and listen to these programs and research, you know, we're looking for, why am I here? What is my purpose? Is my purpose just to serve some huge, powerful somebody in the way that this huge, powerful somebody expects me to?
Right.
And that pretty
Islam,
much sucks.
In Islam, they say actually that we are the slaves of God. In Arabic, I said this before, you know, the whole word that keeps being used in the Quran, he says, Ya ibadi, which means my slaves.
You see, I'm thinking
but then
that's
they
not
say,
Prime Creator.
No, and then they say that no, but the word ibadah actually means worship. So, who are you trying to confuse here? The same word means worship, but it means also slave, because abd means slave. That's in pure Arabic.
Who worships?
Exactly.
Slaves.
Exactly.
You know, there's a difference between worshiping and honoring and respecting and loving and having a relationship with, because there really isn't much relationship in worship.
Nope.
You know, it's
and they keep
all
telling
of
you
your power away to another being.
Yeah, and they tell you, you know, you have to have the fear of God in you. Even in Islam, they say that, you know, you have to fear God. And I keep saying, what? Why would you fear God? Do you fear your mom and your dad? How do you feel if you fear your mom? I always ask this question. How would you feel towards your mother and your father if you feared them? Would you love them? Well, would you prefer to have a fear-based relationship with your parents, or would you prefer to have a relationship that's based on honoring them and respecting them and caring for them, and vice versa? Wouldn't you expect them to do that for you? Yeah, but then how is that different? They can't answer that, but they're still adamant with the idea. No, because fear, when you fear God, then you don't do wrong things. Well, shouldn't you not do wrong things because they are wrong?
Right, because if God, and it does say in several of the texts that God said, you know, those people over there have ticked me off. Go kill them all, the men, women, children, kill everybody. Well, is it right because this creature, this being that you call God, said, yeah, it's okay? Or is it wrong no matter how you look at it because it's harmful and is anti-life?
Right. It's just like saying, I don't like what you're doing, son or daughter, so I shun you out of my life. I don't like what you're doing.
Or I'd kill you.
Or I'd kill you. Well, that's the extreme. But I'm even putting it into a smaller scale, which is still horrible.
Well,
divorcing yourself from your child, you know, it's just shunning them, just saying, I'm done, I disown you. And that's just the minimum that can happen. How can a parent do that? You know, whatever your son or daughter does, even if they do something bad, there are different ways to deal with things. Try to reach out to them, try to understand. It's your responsibility as a parent. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a doormat, no. If your child is being harmful to you, then you have to react. Those are extreme cases. But if you build a positive, healthy relationship from the beginning, that is not going to happen. I mean, I could as much as say I would be 100% sure that that's not going to happen. I'm that sure. Now, nothing is 100%. Anything can happen. But, it's as above, so below. The relationship we have with the Creator is the same relationship that we can have with our parents, our friends. It's the same type of thing. If you have love and respect, then there's a healthy bond. But if there's fear or lies, then the relationship will go down the drain eventually. And they don't understand that.
Right.
So yeah, going back to the whole thing of Antarctica, I think there's a lot of it that is related to everything that we're talking about. No, really, it is. Nancy, are you there, by the way? We missed you.
No, you didn't. You did fine. I'm enjoying listening to you going back and forth with it. So.
I loved it. I just love everything that you say, Colleen. It's so interesting and enlightening. I know, really, I'm not humoring you. I mean it.
Well, she doesn't. I don't think Colleen appreciates how much people appreciate her.
Exactly.
And I appreciate now Clark because she said something that probably puts it all into perspective. She says, it's a line from a movie. We are dead before we are born and dead after life. Life is a break from death.
Wow, pretty deep.
Yeah.
That hurt my head.
Right. I thought, well, that's about the way it is, isn't it? But also, let's face it, if we're here to experience, then it's good that the rules change. Because if there was only one story, why did God bother? There's only one story. I know everything, but there's only one story. I think it's like you say, okay, I'm God, but I'm going to make many versions of myself. Every conceivable thing I could be, I'm going to put them in this room. So forth. You get these people, and then you just have them start telling stories. And as you go through, one person sets up a scenario, but then somebody comes in and says, well, yeah, but what happens if you do this? And then this happens. And it's a continual...
never-ending story.
Never-ending story.
Right. And Shungite is there as well to help us. Okay, a little thing happened to me. Would like to end it on a beautiful note. A couple of days ago, I was standing with my new colleague. We were talking, and suddenly this black thing just flew in front of me. Just as a natural reaction, I just, moved my hand to move it away. You know what happened? I moved it really fast, and it was an insect. Do you think it flew away? It actually stuck itself on my hand, and it didn't leave. And when I brought my hand back, I thought I just pushed away whatever it was because I didn't understand what it was. I put back my hand in front of me, and I saw this little black cutie. It was a bug, and it was just standing on my hand. And I was like, it didn't even fly away after I pushed it away. She saw that. And I told her, you see? I said, that's the Shungite. She saw that, and it didn't go. I started playing with it. I put my hands, and it started walking on my hand, and on my other hand, playing with it. It didn't go. And she was mesmerized. She never saw something like that. She said, if you told me this, but I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it in front of my eyes. So she saw that. It was quite amazing.
Well, Nora, from now on, I'm just going to introduce you as the bug whisperer.
I've heard that. I think Walt calls me that. Or the bug lady or something like that.
We're at the end of the show here. This show will replay on Tuesday at 4 Eastern Time. Colleen, you want to tell people what's coming up?
I sure will. Hold on just a moment when I figure this out. Okay. Coming up next is the Fans of Whitley Strieber show. Mona's show is still playing on Studio B, and it will also replay later this evening. But coming up on Fans of Whitley Strieber is A Call from Heaven. As the dying leave this world, they often get a glimpse of what lies beyond, and they often describe what they see to their loved ones. But it goes farther, much farther. So that's how the intro to that show starts, and then after that is over, Whitley has another episode of Stories from a Life with Anne. Love, Compassion, and Freedom, followed by Jeremy Vainey's Psychic Awakenings, Fulfillment of a Prophecy. And then after that is the Just Energy radio show with Dr. Rita, and her guest will be speaking of a breed of mysterious man-like creatures, the Southern Sasquatch.
Ooh.
And then we're going to have live on These Changing Times radio at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 Pacific, and the time is now, I'll have to tell you what time that is in Australia, is Unraveling the Mystery with Barbara Threecrow. And then The Big Puzzle with Barry. And I'm not sure who his guest will be tonight, but he always has some interesting guests. Some I agree with, some I don't, but it's always interesting. So that's what's on the lineup for this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I so appreciate you for doing the producing, and have a very nice day. Nora, appreciate you. Always fun. We'll be back on Saturday. Nora and I doing Cosmic Reality Radio. I stay with Haggy Shack because she plays us all anyway. So if you stay on Haggy Shack, you'll hear us whenever we get up. Love you guys out there. Be safe. See you, and love you too very much. Be safe.
Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for visiting. You have been listening to World Talk with Friends, a Haggy Shack Radio Productions
simulcast with Cosmic Reality Radio.